Yeah, welcome. Before we get started, maybe let's acknowledge that we are here on the unceded, stolen, never giving back territories of the Musqueam skirmish in Silverton. I think it's important, we should remember that. Normally, I would say there should be also some kind of action. I invite you to inform yourself about where you're at, why you are here, and find ways to kind of connect with the land you're living on and see who's the actually, who are the people who took care of this before us and who will take care of this, maybe even some of us. Yeah.
For generations and generations to come.
Exactly, thank you. Cool. Yeah, maybe let's introduce you and me first and then the rest.
Well, lovely to meet you all. We're super excited to do this, to conduct this workshop essentially, and as Matthias mentioned, this is a workshop. We'll talk through some of the things that we're going to do today, and then after that it's going to be a fun session, hopefully for all of you. My name is Lavanya. I am a researcher by profession. I work with a digital consultancy here in Vancouver. We moved here about 9 months ago from Australia, yeah, loving the space of user research that I've been in for a very long time, and yeah, lovely to meet you.
Yeah, and I'm Matthias. I'm also a researcher by trade, from academia to UX, working for a media company that works globally. Okay, and I do actually a lot of interviews, so this is close to my heart and what I'm doing almost, not on a daily basis, but very often. Yeah.
So, about Vancouver UXR, Eric, did you want to say a few words? So Eric is, forgot to mention that I'm also one of the organizers of the Vancouver UXR group, and I learned about Vancouver UXR through Eric here. Just had one meetup, it was amazing, and then I joined hands. Go on.
And thank you for helping out. Thank you all for showing up. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what the Vancouver UX Research Group is, if you heard of us. So we are a place together for all user researchers, people who do research, product managers, UX designers, just to really learn from each other about how we do research, because really as a human-centered discipline, we really believe in the impact of curiosity and intention of care and our ability to help. So it's a practice with people, for people, so really it's, we can use our community to help solve problems for consumers, for societies, really all start with research. So with learning and understanding, we're going to get like this today. I hope you can channel this. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Check that out social.
Yeah, please scan the code.
Follow us on Insta, LinkedIn, and all that jazz.
Thank you to our super amazing partners here at Northeastern. Yeah, that's it. Yes, they are so kind to just leave us the university for the night. And we are also here as a shared, collaborated event with the Vancouver Design Check-In, and Eric, the other Eric, who is downstairs and said, welcome to you, sorry, my brain, long day, is still downstairs, but maybe Joel, as the founder of VDC, can say 2 words to that and what VDC is all about.
Thank you, Matthias. I didn't prepare anything, so I'm just going off the cuff. But I'm really happy to see everyone here. I think a lot of you guys know VDC, but pretty much we started after the pandemic, and it was just really, for me, it was a place that I wanted a community to be. And we had a lot of cool organic conversations online, and now we're in person, and we're having really awesome events. And I'm just really happy to see everyone here, just how it just grew about. But yeah, we put off a lot of monthly events, we have socials, we have events, workshops like this, and honestly, whatever community you define community, as long as you show up, that's how we define it for you. So it's the whole community is for you. We are on Slack. If you're not already there, yeah, please join.
Yeah, Slack is also a good place when you have questions, need feedback or anything. There's always someone willing to help, I would say. Good! So, as you see, I'm very dynamic. This is our table of content. But yeah, we're going to go basically how it's going to be today. We're going to go over this, get a little bit like insights on what are user interviews, how do they go, how you conduct them, and so on. And then we're going to throw you in there and you're going to do user interviews.
Like a pro.
Exactly. Oh yeah.
Pleasure.
We also going to share the slides and some resources afterwards, so you can take pictures, take notes, but you don't have to. Okay. Why do we do user interviews in UX? Well, there's many different things, right? One main area, I would say, at least that's where I'm not in, is kind of the generative space where we really start something or need to figure out things before we even go into developing a product, right? It's like, to understand your problem space, to understand the points of users, to understand certain questions. That's one thing. Or at my work right now, for example, it's very often why are people doing things they are doing, and what can we get out of this for the future to create new features or improve the ones we have, right? It's like a really practical thing.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you think about the products, services, experiences that we all interact with, right? Sometimes you are experiencing something and you're like, this is horrible. Like you get frustrated, and at the core of that is that they haven't probably spent a lot of time with the people that they're designing for. So you do user research in advance to ensure that you're designing for human needs. You understand what their needs are, what are their jobs to be done. We call it JPBD in our world. And the pain points that you're solving for. So you can pinpoint where in the customer journey they're struggling and what you can improve, essentially. So, yeah.
And I mean, you also like, at least I often add this also to usability testing or concept testing, or to certain things you do where you have your customer or your user in front of you, and it's always, we're going to go later into this, but it's always good to have at least a few more questions. Like, it's so hard to recruit people. I always try to squeeze as much as I can.
Well, the interview has gone really well if you go over time.
Yeah. If the user doesn't want to stop.
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't go, okay, are we done yet?
Okay. So obviously, when we start preparing, or before we go into user interviews, we have to check with whoever the stakeholder is, right? And we have to really clear up some questions, which is basically, what do I want to know? What is the outcome of this process? Like, what is the exact information, the qualitative data I need to know? And to do that, you have to sit down with whoever is part of the process. For example, for me, it's very often the product team, the marketing team, and the sales team. That's like my go-tos very often. Often it's also the leadership team, like senior leads, because I work a lot with also like business strategy and monetization. So like, these are different areas you often have to involve at least a little bit to get to know what you want to do.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, as Matthias pointed out, knowing what you're working towards, right? Like, what is the end goal? So that it's almost like pieces of the jigsaw that will hopefully come together at the end of the project. So you want to make sure that you have a clear idea of why we're doing this, what are the objectives, what does a win look like, what does a failure look like, so that you can craft the right methodology and move forward. This is all done before you interview customers.
One important thing I actually just last year, for me learned last year is like creating metrics for that too. Which took me some time to kind of understand better. And it also depends on your work environment, because some startups, some companies, they work very with quantitative metrics, but not really qualitative. And that's like kind of tricky space to be in.
Yeah. And on that topic, and a note for myself, I guess, to put in the resource guide, there is this really excellent article called The Anatomy of Digital Product Goals, where they essentially walk you through how you set objectives, expected wins, and metrics. And he really dumbs it down. Like, he simplifies, he makes it super clear. So watch out for that in the resource guide.
Yes. Okay. How do we decide which type of user interviews we want to conduct? Obviously, what we just talked about is it's the objectives, but very often it's way more than that. Unfortunately, it's budget, it's the scope, it's the industry you're working in. If you work in health, you know that you have way more restrictions and way different obstacles like privacy and yeah, even like sometimes you need like a trauma-informed approach to interview people if it's like very sensitive topics, right? So it's like depending on what you're doing, you need that. If you work in a startup, you most of the time don't have time or budget, so you have to kind of wing it and find ways to make things happen. Yeah.
Sums it up. Essentially, what do you need to do in order to get your objective in the time and the budget that you have available and the resources? Yes.
Okay. This weird thing just shows us the different types of interviews. Okay, so there's one main distinction nowadays, which is in-person and remote interviewing. Most of the time, at least, we do remote interviewing now because it's just less expensive. Today you're going to do something rare because not many people do this anymore. It's in-person interview. Secondly, there's a difference between, for example, doing a focus group or one-on-one interview. It's very different. The dynamics are different. The biases are very different, so you have to be careful with that. And then, basically, there's three main types of interviews, or user interviews, which is the main one, which is like generative interviewing, which I just talked about, is like kind of a discovery phase interviewing where you try to have your objective and try to find things out about users' behavior or their motivation, their feelings, their pain points, and so on. It's, I would say, a little more open. The contextual interview is actually something that I almost always also try to do, to be honest, which is either being in the contextual environment of your user or using the product with the user, but in an interview format, right? Like I like to do run-throughs through the product, for example, which helps me to understand and observe a little bit more what people are doing. Yeah, it's just. And last but not least, there's also continuous interviewing, which is like a more broader process of continuously coming back to the user and kind of get this very similar qualitative data on certain things and see how they change over time, right? Very often this is not happening because long-term thinking is not very much important in short-term startup culture, but it's really good. Yeah. And then last but not least, there's kind of the structure of the interview, which is like you can have it structured, which is kind of having like asking everyone the same exact questions. You have semi-structured, which is a little more open. You have like objectives of questions. You have like objectives of what you want to know and ask these questions throughout the process. And then there's an open structured interviewing, which is like you have like this is for me the GOAT type of interview, because you don't have a real interviewing script, but you kind of go with the flow, open, and have like really conversational. Why do we do these differences? The moment you have a conversation with your user, you have a way better rapport. You create rapport, you have better connection, and they will tell you way more things. Like I don't know for you, like I have moments where I talk to people and they're just like in a conversation, and they open up, they tell you everything, and it's like wow, I didn't expect that, right? It's not happening always, but this is like one way to go around, and it's kind of that's why structure or not having a structure is so important, or not giving the feel of having a structure in your interview, not being like a robot. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's a dialogue, right? And that's where qualitative research is different from quantitative research, is sending out a survey. Because in a survey, you can be super structured, have multiple choice questions, open-enders, people will be right or not right. I mean, when you're having a conversation with someone, it's dialogue. It's curiosity to learn more about them and why they do things a certain way. So there's a lot of opportunity, as you can tell, with these options here. There's a lot of opportunity to have fun with it. So, if you're working for a retail client, you might do an accompanied shopping exercise where you're literally with the customer, kind of observing what they're doing, and then after that you have an interview. So, whereas if you're interviewing doctors, they may not have the time to sit down with you and have an interview. So they'll say, well, let's do a Zoom call and I have 30 minutes. So how do you make that super efficient? So there are different ways to do this, but at the end of the day, it is about building rapport. It doesn't matter if it's a doctor, a mother, a business professional, a carpenter. You can build a rapport with anyone.
Cool. So we have to go faster. Just too much. Okay. We like to talk. Plan the interview. Hey, it's like any design project. I would say like. Let's actually like 1 little second, like who is an absolute junior here, and who's like has like 1+ year experience, and who has 3+. Let's do this. Anything. Let's do right now. Anything. Like, let's see like right out of college speaking. Don't feel shy. It's good. Okay. Beginner, which is here. Okay, one year, okay, beginner, and who has like 1 year of work experience, let's say, like in UX, design or research. Okay. And like 3 years. Okay, there's like intermediate. Good. Okay, so it's like a good mix. But have fun. I just want to know like how fast can we go over these. Because at the end, it's the same as any design project at the end of the day. So you need to method, or if you have experience with research in academia, it's the same thing. You need to methodology. But in design or design thinking, it's the same thing. You have to have your kickoff meeting with your stakeholders. It's the same funny, happy thing you have to do anywhere. You set your goals, your objectives, your outcome. You define your target audience, and your right is research planning, which nowadays is more and more easier because find everything online. Do it. Okay. We have questions in the end. If you go too fast. Okay.
Yeah, talk about this if you want. So essentially, when you're looking at who do I want to talk to, right? Like who are the right people to speak with? It's based on your stakeholder interviews. It's getting clear about the features of the people that you're going to talk to. So that's what we call a screener. So say male, female, ethnicity, usage behavior, attitudes. we might have a list of things that come out of that kickoff meeting, right? Because these are the kind of people that we want to understand what their journey is like. So we want to make sure that we identify those people. Usually they're recruitment firms that you can work with will do that for you, or you might need to do it yourself. So that if you heard of the double diamond, another resource guide thing for us to add, you go broad first and then you go narrow. That is the goal. And then you write an interview script. So essentially, once you've found these people, you write an interview script, or some people call it a discussion guide, where you structure, your intro, getting a little context, questions in there as to what this person does for a living, family, and then you get into the nitty-gritties of whatever is the topic of your research. And incentives. If they're regular people like you and me, always good to make sure that they're incentivized for the 1 hour or 45 minutes that they spend with you. So again, you could work with recruitment firms for that, or you could work with the client to make sure that they get $50, $100, whatever it is for spending that time with you. And before doing the interview, if you're in an internal team, do a little pilot, like what we're going to do today with the workshop, right? Like a little bit of a practice session. Is the flow making sense? Do I sound like a robot? Do the questions feel very natural? That kind of thing.
Okay. What type of interview questions do we have? Obviously, we want to start with warm-up questions or intro questions, however you want to call them. Ideally, you already have demographics beforehand, so you don't have to ask these. If I don't have that, I try to integrate these questions into the warm-up. Or if there's some information like books, I work a lot in B2B, the business-to-business sector, so if I need to know about their work process and the work environment, that's going to be one of my first questions. Like, how does a global day look like for you, right? Like these kind of things. There are already a lot of information from them, and it's something they might feel more comfortable to talk about before they go into like more specific fields. Okay. Discovery questions. This is like more like a generative approach, like finding out certain things. Behavioral questions is specific to how do you do things, right?
Break it down for me. Tell me about the last time that you bought a purse, if that's what your research has most, like what their shopping behavior is like when we go shopping for a purse. Very simplistic example, but
I think I'm.
No, that's
it's the same with a question about past and future use. I don't like the future use, honestly. I think past use is a better question. Like, you never know what the future is. The same as like if I ask all of you how often you go to the gym, and then I observe that, it's going to be might be a different answer and different behavior, right? So we have to think about like what we actually do and what we ask, people because of social constructs and blah blah blah. Tell us their routine, right? Specific task questions that Lavanya just mentioned. Follow-up questions, very important. Like keep on asking certain things to get deeper.
I think we have a few examples of that in the slides, but more so like, tell me more about that. In what way? Oh, go on, tell me more. It's like trying to avoid your personal biases as much as possible, letting them speak, and if they say something that they didn't elaborate on, then kind of say, how often would you say you do that? So avoiding sort of don't you, do you kind of questions that force a yes or no response, so trying to avoid that. It's good.
So you see me jump forward.
That's what happens in an interview, by the way.
Definitely. Or like looking on the slides, like on your script, that's not good because it just looks weird. The most important thing, at least that's what I think, is having a really warm or welcoming environment, and that's something you also have to do on a remote call. Like, don't do your calls in a coffee shop, or sometimes even like I feel having a blurry backgrounds and it's just not personal, right? Like having ways to create this connection, which is something you have to do on and offline, basically. And very important, get your consent on record. That's what I always do. often we have to do research agreements, but I like to do, for example, always get this on record. Like, the moment I would report, I ask again, I need to have this very important. Your legal team will love you for that. Acknowledge, very important. You actually do it, yeah.
Yeah. So just making them realize that this is a conversation. We are genuinely curious about you. There are no right or wrong answers, and even have this approach with them, kind of like, even I don't know everything, so I'm just super curious about what you feel, and kind of making them know this is not about other people or marketing it to somebody else. This is about you as an individual. What do you want? What do you need? So no right or wrong answers.
Be interested in the person in front of you. I think that's the point. And check your body language. I do a lot of interviews around the world, and body language means different things in different countries, right? Well, for example, I learned this in Iran, actually means I'm listening. In other countries, that means I'm not listening. So it's very, like, these kind of small things is really important to integrate and to know about, right? Same with pronunciation of names. I think it's sometimes can be hard, but like, it's super important. Okay, the 5 whys. Always ask again the why, because the why is where we are in interviews. We want to find out why people are doing or thinking or feeling things the way they are doing. And basically what you want to do is, it's just one technique in interview, is ask. Sometimes if there's a topic where you feel like there's more depth to it, you ask again. So you just don't say why. Like, I was like, little kids actually have make sense there, but formulate it differently, but try to get to the point there.
And sometimes silence can also be a good thing, huh? Like, you can respond by saying, and then just pause for like 4 seconds. Usually they'll fill in what's in their head. So be comfortable with silence, because usually you've got a chatty person, or even not so chatty person, you've given them the opportunity to fill in the space, right? So, and then there's the usual, tell me more about it. Okay, could you elaborate on that a little bit? That kind of thing.
I once had an interview with someone who didn't talk at all, and I had a really bad day. And I just wanted to have it over. Yeah, like, terrible. So like, but then they actually have been more silent. I tried this, but they were also silent. So like, really hard to make silent game. Okay, normally this doesn't happen. This is like one in a few hundred. We're not going to go into analyzation today, because we want you to conduct. Hopefully, most of you know affiliate diagramming. In each process, you will have deliverables in some shape and form, like customer tracking, or sometimes you want to get user personas out of it, or sometimes you want to get certain information out of it and see like patterns, right?
So this is essentially the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, right? Coming together. So you did stakeholder interviews, figured out why are we doing this project, what success looks like. You went and did all those interviews, and now it's time to analyze so that you can build a report and present the information, right? So you need to analyze, are there similarities in the different locations that people stay in, or in usage behavior, or attitudes. So there might be a lot of themes that come up, which usually takes a lot of time, but yeah.
A lot of time. I hope I will be better soon for that. But yeah, still, in the moment you report this, try to stay away from percentage, meaning like 50% of people say this, it's qualitative data, it's not the same. If you have questions, we can talk about this, but like, it's the 2 best practices and tips.
Yeah, so I'll do this one quickly. So listen more, speak less, as we spoke about. So practicing active listening. So when a person is speaking with me, I'm listening to them actively and not thinking about the next question that I'm gonna ask them. Avoid pointing out the issues yourself. Something like, oh, do you always struggle with this particular issue? Like, that's extremely direct, extremely biased. So try not pointing out the issue yourself. Get them to talk about, oh, tell me some of the issues you experience with this, kind of a thing. Don't feel the silence that we spoke about. Don't feel the need to fill it. Be comfortable. Avoid interrupting participants. It's one of my personal pet peeves. I don't like interrupting people. Maybe it's a cultural thing. But yeah, let them finish completing their statement. After that, we go on. Embrace silence.
We also already talked about this. Don't be a robot, right? You talk to humans. You're humans. So the best thing, like, if you already kind of have empathy for people, use it. People are nice. Almost everybody has something interesting to share with you. I personally, when I go into interacting with anyone, I always go there like, there's something I can learn from this person. And I think this curiosity is kind of also what makes good UX research.
Just a few examples. Tell me about a time. Tell me about how do you feel about. So nothing that warrants a yes or no. Would you? Wouldn't you? Do you? Don't you? Very direct. It's more about tell me more. How do you feel about that? How would you elaborate on that? Just that kind of thing.
One more thing is like biases. I think in judgment can be really hard if you're. I don't know, if you're in the US and you're a hardcore Democrat, AOC fan, and you have to interview a Republican, Trump, I don't know, like just make this up right now. But it's a human being, they have other opinions than you, and they might say things you're not going to like. But try to find a way to do that without judgment. This was a good exercise in this chaotic world we could have more.
Neutral expressions are always good as opposed to frowning or like I loved what you said kind of a thing. So yeah.
And I like what you said at the end. Take a moment. I often do like a little breathing exercise. I meditate, so I like to do this before I go into any interview. Also helps for the nervousness if you need to. So meditate. Good ethics. Obviously, it's important. Informed consent, right? And explain them what you're using this for, and you don't want to elaborate why you are asking the questions you're asking, but you want to, meaning at least say that we want to find out more about behavior, blah blah blah. Like, don't be too specific because you don't want to read anything, but you want to let them know how it's used, where it's used. This is going to be used internally. Nobody else is going to see that outside of this company, out of this department. That's very important. Be as much diverse and inclusive if you can, and balance your research goals with implicit well-being, right? Like, just because we want to know something, if you feel the other person is not comfortable sharing, don't push it too hard. You want to be sensitive for that. Life's not emotions. Good. It was very quick. Not very long, actually, not quick. But yeah. Any questions for now?
I have a situation because I have been a designer for 5 years, and I barely have a chance to go out and interview people because at my company, the business department always the one who go out and ask, and they come back to me and give me the result. So from company to company, that always happens to me. Like they meet more as a designer, and then they have another department to go out and ask. So
what's your title?
Product designer. That's what
you should be able, as a product designer, to say like, I need to do my own interviews for product development.
The thing is, I don't know, like because the company always has someone who professional, the business is very sensitive, and not people allow me to go and talk to people. So do you think should I just work the way they want me to work, or break the cycle?
I say break the cycle, but don't lose your job. I don't know. We can't say this here. But it's good you're here because this means you will be able to practice a little bit and see how comfortable you feel, and then maybe you can say like, hey, I was at this workshop doing interviewing, so can we do a dry run? I have like this or that topic of this feature we haven't looked into, and I really want to know more how our users are feeling with that or how they're doing.
Yeah, and especially making the case of I need to know how the users are interacting with this thing so that I can design a better product, because at the end of the day, they're going to use it. So I need some visibility into that. So definitely showcasing that confidence that, oh, we can do a couple of dry runs internally, and then if I could do it, that'd be great. A second option that we used to do with people who were not in our team is that after we did the interviews as researchers, we just write 10 interesting things about Sarah, right? And we do a one-pager, and then we'd share it with the team, and then they'd get like an insight into, like quickly on that day, so Sarah lives in Iowa, Sarah, day to day, this is what she does, this is how she engages the product, like 10 points. So that it's kind of, you get an insight into the interview without conducting the interview yourself. So you could propose that to your team as well, as another option. 10 interesting things, give me the highlights from the interview on the day.
Yeah, and the last is just like, can I sit on this interview?
Oh yeah, note taker, yeah.
I want to be there. And then I often have like my product designer with me, and he's asking questions afterwards. Like,
That's a good idea.
that, just be persistent.
Go, Sarah.
Well, for me, like, because I work a lot with B2B, there's like, just even company cultures are different, and how much people like to share of the company, what's going on within the company. So you sometimes have to ask questions, like kind of dancing around the topic a little bit more to get to the point. That would be one, but like, I do those interviews in Spanish or in German, and I'm automatically going to interact differently with them. So just a different.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, it depends on what you're doing and what's the nature of the interview, right? Like, let's say in Singapore, if you were interviewing like a more senior person versus a junior person, and they're both in the interview, usually the junior person will keep quiet because the senior person will lead it, and it's wrong to because hierarchy is a thing over there, right? So being conscious of those little nuances. Then there's the senior person kind of leading in this case, but then trying to figure out how you can get the junior person to talk when he has a space of his own. That would be an example.
Well, then you have to ask certain things so people answer them. Like example, and there's like one example where there's like low context and high context cultures. Like just like what people say might be way less in some cultures. In some they're going to just talk for 10 minutes. Right? So,
and a really good book is this book called The Culture Map. I forget if you read that one. I forget the name of the author, but excellent book. She essentially plots different countries on a spectrum on 8 different attributes as to, from hierarchy to relationships, attitudes towards relationships to decision making. Fascinating. I recommend it.
yeah. Chance. I think you said one, right? Like, how have you used your gym app yesterday? Like,
tell me about the last time. Like the key thing is, if you remember, some people call it KISS, keep it simple, stupid, so it's kind of keep it as simple as possible. So it's like, tell me about the last time you used your gym app, and let them break it down. If they don't break it down, if they say, oh, I used this app and then I went, I signed up and then I went to the gym. Okay, can you tell me more about that? What did you do first, second, third? If you can step by step tell me. So that's kind of getting them to elaborate, and that's the past. Future use we recommend avoiding if you can, right? This predictive, and people may not behave the way that they said they will behave.
If I ask you, would you go 5? No, it's like super leading. But like, how would you use the this or that feature in the future. It's like it's not going to work. You're not going to get good data. Like honestly, I don't like it. People still do it sometimes.
Yeah. However, if you want to kind of say if you want to design a better product, right, and you want to get ideas from them, you can reserve that to be the very last question where you go, okay, tomorrow you're nominated as the CEO of this company. What would you do to make this product relevant to people like you? What would you do? You know, so that's like blue skies, but then it's in the very end of the interview so that you haven't biased them and you've got some ideas as well.
Actually, I've done that. It's true. Like yeah, like if there's anything, like I do, yeah, at the end, like if there's anything you would like to have changed in this product, what would it be? Like one thing. Boom. And sometimes it's really helpful, and sometimes you can just write it off. Just have to be aware of that.
That's best in terms of what?
So like it's not a question, it's the answer. Like the question doesn't really matter. It's like because almost always you ask similar questions, the answers you're getting back because of how you build up to the question, that's the juice. That's what you want. And that's like building this connection with the person in front of you. There's one example for me, like this is like for me, my personal on the opposite side, the most craziest example I had once a job interview with one head of research somewhere. And she was so good, I didn't feel I was interviewed. I felt I was like just talking to a friend. It was really scary because I like, I shouldn't have said that.
You reveal too much.
Yeah. So that's a really good thing. Like this is like wow. It was for me like technique she used there, like, and it was like the environment she created, the talking, like everything. It was like on point.
Yeah, the best interviews, you're not really asking a lot of questions. They're just giving you really long answers based on the probes. We call them probes, like the whole, tell me more about that. Could you elaborate on that? Oh, in what way? How do you do that? You know, those are the key nuggets that will sort of lead you to the truth. Because again, going back to the 5 whys, right? Like that's an excellent exercise to get to the root cause of stuff.
So, how important is this question? Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but
we can come to you personally because yeah, so if you want to describe
because we need to get going. We need to work. You have to work. Me too, actually, because we're going to be your users today. Okay, so our ideas here is the following. We group up 3 people or so. Okay, we're going to give you some briefs. I think some of you already have the paper. Perfect. It's very short little statements at the end. You can choose one with your friends and then write a really short interview script. We can help you with that if you need help for that, I would say. Ideally use a semi-structured interview. That's going to give you the most benefit here. And then you want to assign roles. You want to have an interviewer, a note taker, and an observer. And let's go. Ideally, we have 15 minutes interviews, and ideally you have in your group, each one of you can do one interview. You interview once. Okay? So we're going to rotate the roles. Make sense? And for note taker, it's since we don't record this is actually a very important role because the note taker is the person who has to write down whatever comes out of the interview. So like the action done. Because VDC is also all about meeting new people, so you're not going to be with people you know. You're going to just randomly mix you up. Kind of.
And we'll obviously be walking around the groups when we're not being interviewed, I guess, to just make sure if you have any questions at all, and just reach out and yeah, we can answer them.
So let's group you up, and then we're going to get started.